I hope you will not fall asleep for the next half an hour or like 15 minutes that we're going to have our panel. And this is where we could definitely use your questions, dear friends. So I'd like to bring back the panelists, the speakers today for maybe 15 minutes conversation around the future, the past, and the presence, I think, or present of AI. So let's see if everybody's going to come back and join us. And that's always kind of a great opportunity for us to just, have an informal discussion. So if you have any questions around any of the topics that have been covered so far, this is an opportunity for us to discuss all those things together. And while you're typing maybe some questions, I have a question I would like to start with, just to give us maybe a little bit of calm around AI. I feel like overall, it's just all feels like everything is moving so fast, everything is kind of moving somewhere. And I do have to ask, kind of building on top of the very first talk by Maggie. Unfortunately, she couldn't join us today here in the panel. But she mentioned something that really stuck with me. She mentioned that language models are predictably unpredictable, right? And the question that I had then in my mind is, can we actually control something that's unpredictable? Or perhaps do we need a different understanding of control at all? I have a strong feeling that Martin has some thoughts on that.
Well, this is what I was talking about with the
Right.
non-deterministic systems, right? They are language models, and they just statistically output information. So if you give the same prompt 100 times, it'll give you, even if you set temperature to 0, it'll give you different responses some of the time. So if you build any kind of system around it, you need to account for the fact that the AI will not necessarily respond, which is why I think this current model that we're employing, which is the chat-based model, like you talk to the AI, is a fad. The reason why we do it like that is because ChatGPT was the first encounter normal people had with like direct access to an AI system. But when you go look at the OpenAI API that Tejas talked about and others have talked about, once you start writing software around it and you take the prompting away from the user and put the prompting into your software, you can more tightly control what is happening. And you can account for things like when it says things that don't make any sense, you can exclude them and run the query again. And in the future, I think we'll see far more of AI being built invisibly into systems, like through functions, for example, so that it automatically does function calls based on human input. So you can ask a question, and then it'll trigger a function in the software to do something, and the AI will be used to parse the question into something understandable, which is what Adobe is already doing, right? The Photoshop example is a good example of how we will be integrating AI. Like that, the chat module will just be, you give a human language input to what you want, the AI translates that into something and sends the translation over to software, and then the software does whatever you built around it.
Right. I actually find that this feeling, notion of having invisible AI is something that I think I'm missing. It seems like we always have to do something. We always have to, it's mostly the prompt, and then we have to do something with it. And I really like these examples where, like Miro, for example, right? In Miro, you have the sticky notes, and then you can say, hey, make sense of it, cluster it in a way that makes sense. And then it creates these groups and it gives them labels and all of that. It's magical. That's what I kind of want. At the same time, you have these applications where you kind of get insights. So you have all the data and have a few buttons here and there, and they say, well, make sense of it. And it translates and kind of explains to you what it actually represents and means. So maybe that's also a question for CJ. Do you see, because I know that you've been playing with AI so much, do you see any really interesting examples of where you think, oh, this is where it's all going? Maybe beyond the notion of a prompt.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's important for us to remember that this is all very new, right? And people are still very much figuring out the best way to utilize these and integrate them into workflows. We're starting to see them sort of meet people where they are more and more. And I think that's going to continue to be a trend. You're going to see a lot more integrations seamlessly into tools. And I think, as people are kind of looking and trying to figure out what tools to explore and because there's so many out there, I think it's important for people to kind of make sure that they're meeting them where they are, right? Like think about your workflows, what you're doing, and how these things can kind of fit in and help you out with the pain points that you're having.
Makes sense. Building on top of that, maybe also a question to Tejas. We all talk about, like, again, front-end development, back-end development, full-stack development. Do you see us moving towards voice-based development anytime soon?
No, I can't say that I do, because again, it's nice to have a sounding board, but I think prompt-based development might be something. After all this, we hear about prompt engineering, and also the statement from, I believe the statement was from multiple speakers, right? Where humans won't be replaced by AI, but will be replaced by other humans who are just good at using AI. And to that degree, I think maybe prompt-based development's the thing that I would kind of be sensitive to.
And maybe also a question for Sophia then to kind of build up on top of that, because are there actually any features that you would see where you would like to kind of to see something inside of, I don't know, with Stable Diffusion or any kind of other tools that generate images, where you would like to see a better way of dealing with that, kind of granularly defining what you want to do, anything that you feel like, oh, I would love to have that. Or maybe you've seen some examples that are really, really promising or unusually interesting, I would say.
Yes, I think that I don't really want to spoil much of it, but the whole outpainting thing and not only generating an image and having a fantastic image to do stuff with it, but being unable to work with the things that you can see in the picture. So I really think that in generative AI linked to images, like that's the next step for kind of most basic uses, as I was speaking of in my presentation. So I really think that's where we're going to, kind of the whole editing within the freshly generated images.
Oh,
The current.
okay. I don't know if you've watched the last season of Black Mirror. Anybody?
Not yet.
I'm not going to reveal too much, but the very first episode of the new season, I can't reveal now that you haven't seen it. I'm not going to kind of spoil it, but it kind of really shows how, like, all the different things that we think about when we think about AI, how can blend together seamlessly. This is kind of really interesting part, like the invisible again, when we're dealing with anything that's generating, that's surrounding us. And one notion that was really interesting to me was the idea of lifetime generation based on AI, based on what the camera sees in front of you. So the idea being, like, imagine that you are watching a movie, right? And that movie could be customized, like that. Imagine Netflix, but customized for everyone, basically based on what your surroundings are, what you're watching, what you're doing, what your preferences are, what you have seen or heard or read or anything in the past. Do you think, like, at this point in 2023, given that this is the first episode of Black Mirror, do you think like this is totally unrealistic and just, Skynet stories all over again? Or are we actually living in this world already? Anybody wants to take this one? CJ, I know that you're not a futurist, but you kind of are.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of my disclaimer, I guess. Like, I mean, none of us really know what's going to happen, but I mean, I think it's inevitable with, like, the amount of data that's out there on everybody and, like, the way that you can generate and dynamically generate content now with this stuff, and that technology is going to continue to improve and get better. I think it's inevitable that we're going to start to see custom advertisements and content sort of generated specifically for us as we sort of browse the internet. And this is why I was kind of alluding to, like, we don't know what the future of the internet is going to look like as this stuff kind of continues and evolves. But I think it's, it's definitely interesting to kind of keep tabs on it and try to at least anticipate where this stuff is going as it continues to change and grow.
Okay. Anybody?
Yeah, this is mainly just a question of technological power. Like we currently have the capability of doing that, except for the video part, right? Surveillance capitalism has collected enough information about us that we have AI systems that can predictively guess at what we want next and can generate information that appeals to us, as proven by TikTok, right? You stream through TikTok, it'll give you what you want, even if you didn't tell it to, and it'll surface content to you that you didn't know you wanted, or you didn't know that your subconscious mind would be attracted to in some way, like positive or negative, right? So we have the data. What's missing is just the ability to transform that data into like narrative video fiction. You can do it in narrative fiction. I wanted to point out, like, the Wired magazine published an article in 1997 called Life Streams that talks about David Galanter and his vision that, like, in the future we will have life streams where you just go into a device and it'll have like a stream of consciousness type thing happening. This is in a way like this is all playing out according to a very obvious timeline, right? And our power in this right now is that we have influence over how we use these things and how we choose to have them in society. And especially as designers, we can choose how we want to use these things and what kind of futures we want to build for people. And we can like look at this, like the reason Black Mirror exists is ostensibly to say, this is the path we're heading down. Please don't do this. What we've learned over the decades of Black Mirror is somehow scientists look at that and go, that sounds like a good idea. And then
yeah, more like an inspiration, I would
right.
say, at times. Yeah.
So,
interesting. Maybe also to Sophia. Then I mean, I like those. I don't know. It's like we're talking about now. We're talking also about the future. So I think like I'm just going to bring it up. Do you think that we will need to get, I don't know, some special Oscar nomination for any kind of stable diffusion generated artwork at some point, or are we just not going to go this route? Or is it just too surreal and weird? And why would we do that?
Actually, at this point, as you were mentioning, with sci-fi becoming real life, I wouldn't even bet on whether it won't happen or it will happen, because eventually in 10 years in time, who knows, maybe some graphic design awards are all focused on artificial intelligence generated images. It could be a thing. But what I'm really looking forward is mentioning what you were talking about, the regulations and so on, this whole thing that they want to do about creating a symbol or some sort of brand to differentiate AI generated content with deep fakes and so on, which I think is quite risky. So I think that's kind of more the direction, not so not targeting the awards things, but kind of like this isn't really a thing. Don't fall for it with deep fake technology and fake news and stuff. So that's what worries me about this kind of AI video generation and stuff.
What I also see, by the way, is that I feel like maybe because of deepfakes or because of the general kind of conversation about AI, that people have become a bit more skeptical about the internet, which is in general a good thing, right? And a bit more critical, although it's not happening on the level that we all deserve. I mean, most of the time, something will be posted and then it gets hundreds and thousands of likes and clicks and whatever before people even read it. But Sophia has opinions on that.
Yeah, I remember that there was a trending kind of post on Reddit about somebody who faked like images from a 2001 earthquake and tsunami in Canada, I think. And all the comments were like, people in 2030 are going to have a big trouble differentiation, like what actually happened and what didn't. So I really think that that's kind of a thing that we're not really seeing now. And eventually, maybe it's an issue in the future too.
Yeah. Also, just one thing that I noticed, and I wanted to mention that as well, talking about videos and all. There was this incredible innovation, which I thought was quite remarkable, where based on the audience, again, talking about customization, right, of videos, where based on the country or based on the language that let's say Netflix would be producing a video in, they would be basically changing the movements of the lips of characters with AI to match the language, right? Which will obviously also help in different scenarios, also for accessibility, for example. That, I think, is one of the interesting things. And I'm wondering if we're going to create these images of people who will then be just used in movies. And I mean, maybe I'm just too futuristic. Maybe I am a futurist after all. Maybe not. I hope not. But that all of it sounds very, very scary. So not to go into scare mode, I would like to kindly ask you a good positive thought about AI to kind of wrap up the evening as we're moving forward. Because again, imagine somebody watching this in 2042 thinking they were scared of AI, those stupid people, right? So let's take a look at like maybe on the positive side of things. Where do you think it will excel, and where will it help humanity to reach new heights? Anybody wants to start? Tejas, I know you have opinions on that, don't you?
I do. I mean, it's already helping me personally a lot unlock my own creativity. And this, I feel like, so when I'm blocked, when the cathedral effect is not working and the ceiling is here and I'm wearing a hoodie or something and I'm not so creative, what I used to do was I used to ask my friends for ideas. Hey, tell me about this, and what's interesting to you, and so on. And I still do that, but AI could be a supplement there. I sometimes, if I'm wanting to, if for whatever reason I can't do a certain exercise I like, right, and I want to kind of work the same system in my body, then I just go to ChatGPT. I'm like, hey, give me a new exercise for this same output, right? For
But
the
of
same.
course, you say, "Dear ChatGPT, how are you doing today?"
Absolutely. I say, my supreme AI overlord, please bequeath upon me the blessing of ideas. Yeah, or if I actually did this and it actually worked. So I'm a huge fan of, unfortunately, protein bars, right? And I was like, this is way too expensive. I want to make my own. Normally, I would go to Google and just type protein bar recipe. Turns out I didn't. I like instinctively, I went to ChatGPT and I was like, how do I make a protein bar? Give me a recipe. Tried it, worked better than anything else. And there's an interesting note here. The reason I didn't want to go Google and go to a website, or DuckDuckGo or whatever, Google doesn't own the monopoly on search, right? Is because recipe websites have just become a massive pain in the butt. Like there's cookie banners on other banners on banners on banners on banners, and then there's like a lot of nonsense before you get to the actual ingredients and methods. Versus ChatGPT is just like, here's the ingredients, do this, done. And I think maybe the advent of ChatGPT and AI is also probably a wake-up call to make nicer websites and have better UX so that people go to our things instead of AI models for answers.
That's uplifting. That's a good thinking. Excellent. Thank you, Tejas. Anybody else wants to build on top of that? TG?
Yeah,
TJ?
I can chime in. So I mean, much like Tejas, for me, I think it's been really useful in like filling the gaps in my abilities. I think like I like to lean on it in areas where like I may not be stronger, and kind of like then go from there and be like, okay, I've got it from here. I'll take over and continue to build out from there. It's been really helpful in kind of accelerating my workflow in that way, and just like, staying on task. Like I was talking about flow a bit, and just continue to like know what's next, have it give me like sort of, you could even have it like give like schedules for you or like outlines, and have it assist you in those sort of like more tedious like applications as well. So yeah, it's been super helpful, I think, in that way, for sure.
All right. Sophia?
Yeah, I think in the line that was mentioned as well, I think it's in the point that is right now, it's really helping us to rediscover ourselves, maybe even as workers even. For me, I feel like AI really gave a whole backflip in my work life and day-to-day life and routine. So I think that it's really making me see things in a different perspective that wasn't even unexpected. I wouldn't have thought of it 2 years ago. And also what was mentioned were about the simplicity of ChatGPT compared to different websites. I really think that is also going to be a revolution, because really, unless you have 42 ad blocks in your computer, it really is a pain in the ass to look for content, to do research, to learn about stuff. So really, that kind of thing of, I have a question, okay, are you going to be even more helpful and even more simply, not so saturating to read from? It's really going to be a thing that's going to change stuff from now on. So I'm optimistic about it all as well.
Excellent. Well, there are reasons to be optimistic. Are there reasons to be optimistic, Morten?
Oh yeah, AI unlocks the potential in people like nothing else, because it lowers the barrier to entry for almost anything. If you want to learn to, like, if you need to build an app, AI can now help you build an app, so you don't need to learn to become an app developer to do it. If you have an idea in your head of an image, instead of having to learn to draw, you can go do it. If you need to remove a person or a duck or whatever from a photo you took at a wedding, you can just go ask AI to do it, and you don't have to like pay someone to do it or learn how to use Photoshop. I keep thinking of like, our son is 6.5. When he's 18, how different his world is going to be from ours, and how much he doesn't need to learn how to technically do to be able to do. and the enormous potential that sits in there for society. Like, we have the opportunity here to really take the remedial, boring, crappy jobs that people are currently doing that they hate and give them to AI systems or AI-powered systems, and then let those people do jobs that are meaningful to them. Let them spend their time doing things that actually matter instead of doing these jobs that people hate. That is an opportunity we have. And what I'll say is, the future that we're heading towards is not inevitable. It is something that we build together. And the way we do that is by actively talking about what futures we want. Rather than just letting the future be something that happens to us, we need to have conversations about what future we want. We need to get together in rooms like this and actually say, what should the future look like, and how do we make that happen?
Wow, that's very powerful and very wonderful ending, I would say, for today's meetup for us. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. That was incredible to get all your insights, and thank you so much, Tejas, for jumping in to BMC and literally like 2 minutes before the start. So that was actually quite nice. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for your insights, dear friends who are still here, still listening to us. Please, a round of balloons. Why not balloons? Like balloons, like friendly balloons emoji for our wonderful speakers. Thank you, CJ, Tejas, Sophia, Morten, and of course also Maggie for your insights today. That was wonderful. Thanks, everyone.